Hello, everyone. Welcome to our special event. We are so excited to be able to feature some amazing individuals, colleagues, friends who stutter and who also happen to be speech-language pathologists. I'm Anna Paula Mumi, the president of Spero Stuttering, and Mandy Rodstrom, my friend and colleague, who is also a Spero ambassador who has done so much volunteer work for us and with us. And we just are so appreciative of her time and just her dedication to our mission. And we are just so excited about this. We're calling it the Value of Stuttered Voices in Speech-Language Pathology. And we're really thrilled to kick off National Stuttering Awareness Week with this event. And we've been talking about elevating the voices of speech-language pathologists who stutter for a really long time. And we were really inspired last, I guess it would have been November, at ASHA with the ASHA's keynote speaker. And he said, storytelling creates the opportunity for you to find yourself in others and for others to find themselves in you. And he also shared how storytelling fosters empathy, authenticity, and relationship. So our hope tonight is that we might see ourselves in each other and that we might glean from each other's experiences and that we might continue to build community through our shared understanding. I'll also share that Michael Boyle and some of his colleagues discussed the importance of personal stories and really connecting with people who stutter. Some of their research, in fact, they found that one of the most effective strategies for overcoming negative reactions and breaking down stereotypes towards stuttering is personal connection and contact with people who stutter. So what better way to celebrate and promote stuttering awareness than to chip away at stereotypes through your stories. So we're so excited.
Thanks, Anna Paula. Yes, and to echo what you just shared, so for the past couple of months, we've been featuring the stories of ordinary SLPs who stutter on Spero's social media platforms. And if you haven't seen those, we highly encourage you to check it out. And it's been so impactful to know your stories. We have 5 panelists who will be sharing more tonight. And so if our panelists, if you could please give us a wave as I say your name, that'd be great. So first we have Cody Dew. Next we have Lauren Schlemmer and Kyle Pelkey, Randy Panzarino, and Tim McCarran. But for the other amazing SLPs who stutter who also participated and who are here with us, please don't hesitate to share your story as well or add input. So we're so grateful you all are here tonight. So Cody, we're going to start with you. In your story, you shared quite a bit on cultivating authenticity, and you named self-acceptance as the most important factor for living successfully. Could you share more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think about like when I was in grade school, even through high school, I didn't actually know what stuttering was. I I, I, I talked about it in my response. You know, growing up, I was always told that I was stuttering because I had anxiety. Um, and so that's just kind of what I always thought. And I remember, you know, being especially like in high school and even my first year in college, um, just finding myself at the time defining it as getting really stuck on words and like freezing and just getting these like weird blocks like where I can't talk. And so, eventually I got to the point where I'm like, this has to be something more than anxiety. And so I, just really tried to find the words, and the word stuttering came about, and then just did research online and learned about, hey, stuttering is actually, a real thing. It's defined as a speech disorder and there's treatment for it. So I was like, great, I'm gonna go. There happens to be a highly rated stuttering clinic where I was. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. And so those of you who know him, I actually went to Dr. Rodney Gobble's summer intensive clinic as a freshman going into my sophomore year of college. So when I went in to the clinic thinking, great, at the end of this 2 weeks, I'm going to not stutter anymore. That was my expectation. And then day one, they kind of, they dropped the bomb on the table and they say, yeah, it's not going to go away, right? Therapy is going to focus on helping you manage it and stutter easily, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, at first, like, oh, what? Because, and pretty much everything else I can think of, right? You go to a doctor or a therapist, and the expectation is to, quote unquote, get better. So having just found out, at the time a few months ago, what stuttering was, and then now having, someone tell me that it's not something that can be just, magically cured. It was tough for a little bit, but I really leaned into what I learned in therapy, and it makes a lot of sense. Actually, I came out of therapy, that 2 week intensive program, stuttering more, and for me, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, actually, because I went from being a person who barely raised their hand in class, who didn't introduce themselves, didn't attend social events because of that fear of speaking and of stuttering, to really just doing my best to lean into it and to just stutter openly. Yeah, and that's a story that I share a lot with the clients I work with too. Is because no matter whether or not your goal is to eliminate stuttering, I think everyone has an expectation for it to happen less as a part of therapy. But again, for me, stuttering more meant I was talking more, which was really great. And so, that's like when I think about what it means to be authentic, whether it's with the clients I work with or the 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 college students that I teach and mentor. It really does mean, being who you are, and for me and so many other people here on this Zoom call, that means stuttering when you talk.
Thank you, Cody. Beautifully. Thank you. Anyone else like to reflect on that? Certainly want to open it up to other SLPs who stutter to add on or can relate. I know for me, Cody, I found that just recently, I recently found my authentic stuttering voice after being taught to hide it for my whole life. And it's like I can't get enough of this like new me, but it's always been me. I just wasn't allowed to know that part of me. And now it's like this is stuttering openly, stuttering more, and, you know, participating more because I'm not, you know, I've worked on that fear and not holding back anymore. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Lauren, we're going to move on to you, your friend. In your story, you made an important distinction between Lauren, the SLP stutters, and Lauren, the human who stutters. Could you give us some more insight on this contrast and how you described your resiliency to bounce back from moments when the human who stutters is a little louder in your life?
Yeah, so I can kind of echo what Cody said too. First of all, how, growing up, I tried to not stutter as much as I could. And that kind of built up all of these layers around me where it became very, very, I don't want to use like painful, but there was some trauma in it too every time I did stutter. So I got this really great therapy when I was in college to be an SLP, and it changed my outlook on everything. And I think that's a really important point too, the fact that, there's not just one type of therapy, there's other options that I wasn't even like aware of to begin with. And the fact that it not only helped with my ability to stutter more easily, but it also helped with my overall confidence as well too. I thought that was huge. But yeah, speaking about that, obviously I am an SLP who stutters, and I do have to kind of, use that in a way where I talk to my students, and I kind of have to build their confidence. But obviously being a person who stutters is hard at times. So I do have to have a lot of grace with that. I know there are some times where I kind of fall backwards a bit, and I kind of feel myself starting to get pulled back into that, oh my gosh, you just stuttered, and that was a quote unquote bad one. But then I kind of have to pull out the SLP in me and be like, no, that wasn't bad. That was just, I stuttered a bit more there, and stuttering is variable as it is. I just have to kind of learn to accept that. And as I said before, just kind of have grace for myself, because, we're all human. And I think too that I feel like has kind of formed this strength in me where I can bounce back, and it kind of has helped in other parts of my life too. So yeah, as much as it can be hard at times, and especially having to be an SLP who stutters, who has to kind of preach that at times, I think it's also important to kind of preach that you can't be perfect all the time. And when I say perfect, I mean that perfect person who stutters, who always, stutters easily and openly. Like, I feel like that's doing that all the time is kind of unattainable. So I tell myself that, if it happens, if I fall backwards a bit, then that's just kind of how it is. I mean, we're all human, so.
Thank you, Lauren. I love the phrase of giving yourself grace that you give to your students, right? And that's that beautiful moment that we use that SLP. I love that, Lauren. Thank you. I'm gonna use that. Would anyone else like to add to that? Kyle.
Could I just add one thing? I'm going to start off with some easy stuttering because it helps me. But Lauren, when I think of that, it reminded me of just a very quick story. And I know this is about storytelling. In my town here, I was at an event. It was like a festival. They had like beer tents up and all these different things. And this was last year. And so I met some new people, and I was with people that I already knew. And we're walking around having a nice time, and I notice as it's creeping up, I'm clear as day avoiding words so that I don't stutter. And I was thinking to myself, holy cow, this hasn't happened in a long time. But like you said, Lauren, like that moment of awareness of that, and then like, oh, I'm okay. That's normal that my brain is doing that because I've lived, 18, 19 years of my life that way, right? And to like lead with that vulnerability of, hey, like this is part of me as a person, I think also just helps you to live with it. Maybe it's a part of acceptance too, but I just really resonate with that and that honesty. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Kyle. Anyone else? Cody?
Yeah, if I may, Lauren, I really enjoyed how you rephrased, oh, that was a really bad stuttering moment to, oh, it was just more, more prevalent there. And I think something that we talk about a lot as clinicians with our clients, thinking about stuttering isn't necessarily bad. Fluent speech isn't necessarily good. It's just about getting your message across and out there. But as you pointed out, Lauren, it isn't so simple. And as the person who has to, I guess, preach it and then also feels the need to like walk the walk, so to speak. I can see where that, you were feeling some of that extra pressure, and I think giving yourself grace is the perfect release for some of that pressure.
I could add to that too.
Yeah.
This kind of goes not really on a tangent, but I think the language that we use with all of our clients, but also with ourselves too, is so important. Because I know growing up as a kid, my parents, they never really talked about it at all with me. They kind of thought it was very like taboo. And so that kind of added to things kind of building up for me as well too. I felt like I couldn't talk about it. And I think the way that we do talk about it is very important because we don't want to, infer that like fluency is top and then, stuttering is below that. So I think, and I know that that's a very common thing right now that this stuttering world is talking about. But I think that that is super important too. That's not just the way you talk to your clients, but the way you talk to yourself too.
Tim.
Yeah. All of these things that everyone has been saying so far has been it's so validating to hear, because I'm hearing all these, it's like I'm hearing certain aspects of my own journey through all of you. And I really like what you were saying, Lauren, about just the shift in like how like you view stuttering, and how as someone that stutters, and then as an actual speech therapist, and how there's that interesting thing with when you have a stutter, and you know that you're gonna have some days where all your attitudes about it are really, really good, and like, yeah, stuttering is okay, this is great, this is how I speak, and I'm just gonna do it. And then there's those days where that's hard for whatever reason. It's hard for you to reaffirm that to yourself, yet at the same time you're still preaching that message out to everybody that you work with, saying, no, this is a valid way of speaking, it's just something different, there's nothing wrong with it. And how it can feel sometimes like you're saying it to your client, except you're also listening to it with your other ear, being like, oh yeah, that's right, stuttering is okay. And trying to hear the own words that you're saying as something that you need to hear as well, and trying to believe it as much as you want all of your clients to also believe it too.
you, Tim and Lauren. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Just real quick, just the one thing, Tim, as you said that, it was all those years of me telling my students it's okay to stutter and embracing them, you know, their stutter, that I said that I had that whisper come back to me in my own head saying, Mandy, it's your turn now. Like you got to get on this boat. And so I just love, again, like you said, all these things that we're sharing is affirming. And it's just like, again, yeah, so cool. Sorry, not the right words, but yeah. Okay, Anna Paula, off to you.
Kyle, we're gonna move on to Kyle. You shared about your very first speech therapy session in college when Dr. Tellis did something that was unexpected, but that was transformative for you, even though you didn't fully grasp its value in the moment. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, for those of you who know Dr. Glenn Tellis, he's one of my mentors. And when I went to, it's a very long story, but I ended up going to a National Stuttering Association meeting where I met other people for the first time. At this time, I'm like 20, and it rocked my world that another person had difficulty with their name. I was like, what? Kidding me right now? I thought, like, it's just what I thought. So I started going after a while in there to, I became an SLP undergrad, which I never thought I would do. And I'm in speech therapy, and there's a grad student in the room. I was in speech therapy as when I was a kid, and um, it's really the first time I'm like leaning into it. And he just told me, like, listen, man, you have permission to stutter here and to just talk. And my mentor, Kristen Camella, who is our clinic owner of where I'm at now, also tells me and our clients this all the time. It's okay to keep on talking. And he it just rocked my world. Like, no, I'd never heard that. And so that was just one experience that began to undo this snowball of a lot of hard and unpleasant experiences in my life up until that point. Yeah, I can stop there unless you wanted me to add more. I know there was another story that I had mentioned, but I don't know if you want me to talk
I'll
about
get
that
to that
now.
one here in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say, how have you, just in terms of adding to, how would you say that that has been an example for you and how you approach your clients and just, you know, the
Well,
messages that you attempt to send maybe from the get-go, right? Like just right out of the gate.
he took me where I was at, and I've reflected on this, and anybody else feel free to chime in. But I almost wonder if there's, as a clinician, I feel this. Now I'm talking about as a clinician now, this pressure to do, or to, I have to be doing something right now with the client. And I don't really know where that comes from, and it might just be me. But when you're able to be with the person in the space, non-judgmentally, without any expectations of how it's supposed to be or should be or you want it to be for them, it allows you to I think create a space for them where they feel a safety, and be like they're being heard, um, and like they are okay themselves. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to do to them. You're with them. And I know that gets a little meta, if you will, in that it really is powerful, and I work on it imperfectly. I don't have it uh, mastered by any means, right? But I just, for me, when I was in that space, it allowed me to begin to go like within myself and explore with this openness. Okay, um, so many things about how I think and feel about talking, but I try to work on that with clients.
I love that. And I think that speaks to just this idea of being with, just that building of relationship, right? And just knowing that person and just what makes them tick and what's important to them and all of that. So that's beautiful. Anybody else want to share an aha moment or just something that really was transformative for you, Tim?
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that, Kyle. I I feel like I had a very similar experience as you, where I was in a period of my life where things were quite low with my stuttering mental health, if you will. And I was 22, I believe, and I had just started this therapy program where it was the first time that I had ever heard two things. The first was, you're probably going to stutter for the rest of your life in some shape or form. And for me, that was transformative, because all up until then, I was having these thoughts like, why haven't I kicked it yet? Why is it still happening? What am I not doing well enough to really get it out of here? And that kind of reframed everything. And then, similar to what you heard about, you have permission to stutter. The second thing that this clinician said was, and it's okay to stutter. I was 22, and it was the first time I'd ever heard anyone say that. And it was a mind blowing moment. I felt that in the moment I had to kind of sit there and just, on the outside, I was going, huh, okay. But on the inside, it's like, oh my God, because it's changed my whole outlook on everything. And it really like set me on a separate path. And it was very transformative. And it's as simple as someone just saying, like, no, like, you can stutter here, and that's okay. And you might still stutter. You probably will stutter after you leave here, and that's okay too. And you have permission to stutter. You don't have to hide it. It's these simple things that, for anyone who isn't in the know on what stuttering feels like, it seems like such a nonchalant thing. But for someone who actually does stutter, and for me, I was very much a covert stutterer. It was very transformative and healing.
A lot of those same things, Tim, happened to me too as well. But I remember when I sat down at my first therapy session in grad school. After in high school, I had the therapy, where you do the strategies all the time and everything, and now it didn't work out. Same thing with you too. Every year in school, I was like, all right, next year it's it. I'm gonna beat this thing and it'll be over and done. But then when I sat down for my first session in grad school, my speech therapist stuttered as well. And the very first thing she said to me was, ha, 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 hi. And I was like, whoa, is she trying to do this? Is she not? And that was super, super cool too, just to have someone who kind of like got it and could relate to me. And just at that, up until then, I hadn't ever really been involved with an essay. I hadn't been to a conference. I didn't ever know anyone, I think, at that point who stuttered as well. So that was kind of like a shock to me. I was like, wow, you're just like me. So that was really, really cool too. And I felt like I could almost open up more as well to her. So.
Anyone else?
I know. I mean, again, oh, I love hearing everyone's stories. This is so helpful. And similar experience for me at 41 or 42, however old I was, to hear that for the first time in my life. I felt like that 42-year-old was hearing that, but I felt like also my younger versions were finally hearing that, and it was music I could feel. I don't know if anyone has that similar experience, but I just felt like all those younger Mandys over the years were like, finally, and it was extremely transforming. And you guys talk about like that safe space to like talk about stuttering and learn about stuttering. Even though I had been talking about stuttering with my students, it was a whole other experience for this person right here. And also relating to stuttering as trauma, and a covert person who stutters. So it was just such an amazing exploratory adventure with my amazing speech therapist. Yeah, it was just like extremely transformative and awesome. Yeah. Anyone else? Randy.
Yeah, I love what everybody said so far, and just like even when other SLPs ask me, what should I do with this kid who stutters or whatever, like, we have being a person who stutters, being an SLP and having an interest in stuttering, get so many questions, and I'm just like, if you can just create a safe space for your client to just be themselves, like that is 90% of the job right there. But I can't help but think my friend Nick Brow, some of you might know him. We were talking once, and he does a lot of avoidance reduction therapy, and he says to clients, "Let it rip," and that's like my favorite saying ever now. So like I just tell my kids who stutter or whatever, I'm like, all right, I just want you to let it rip. Like I want to hear it. And then I'm always checking in on how much they feel like they're hiding stuttering or whatever. And that's just a theme for sure. And I definitely am trying to work towards that too. Kind of like Lauren said, like, you know, if you get comfortable in certain situations and then you're put in like an IEP meeting or some more high stakes meeting, and all the avoidance kind of comes back in. Um, and then I even think about like I'm kind of feel like I'm letting my kids or my clients down if I'm in a meeting and I'm concealing my stuttering and I'm not being authentic. So it kind of makes me want to be better or just be more authentic in that sense, or be more vulnerable, I guess is the term. So
Thank you, Randy. Love that. Let it rip. I love that. Taking that one in to work next week. Wonderful. And now we're gonna move on to Tim. Is that right, Anna Paula? I hope I'm here at the right order. Okay, great. Thank you. So you touched on something that seems to be so prevalent in the stories of people who stutter, something that came up in Lauren's story, and that's the isolation of not having known other people who stutter and the difference it would have made. You gave us a picture of being on an island and the beauty of seeing people's islands expanding through community. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me this. When I was a kid, I didn't really know a lot of people that stuttered. There was one other kid in my school that I sometimes saw, and we were very, very different. But outside of that, my only other exposure to stuttering was either in the media, which it wasn't always represented fairly, or it was a very narrow view of what stuttering looks like. It was always someone who had repetitions like that, and they were always very shy and nervous and socially awkward. And for me to see that, it would just kind of make me shrink into myself because I tried everything I could do to hide it. I would do so many things and I would speak around things in such an absurd and elaborate way just so I wouldn't have to stutter. And then the other exposure to stuttering that I had in my life was all these adults who said, "Oh yeah, I used to stutter when I was younger," and I know now that they're trying to make me feel like I'm not so alone. But in in the moment when you hear someone who no longer stutters say, "I used to stutter," it really didn't help me too much. I was thinking, that's great for you, buddy, but here I am stuck in my own world. So you just feel like you're the only one in the world. And yeah, it feels like you're on an island where everywhere you look, there's no one else that speaks like you. Um, and that's why I do everything that I can now to surround myself with other people that stutter. For one reason, so that I can grow my island a little bit and say, "Ooh, I'll bring you onto my island, and then we can be buds." Or, "Oh, I can help you. Maybe we can make a little bridge in between our islands," and just grow to see that you aren't alone and that there's a lot of other people who speak just like you, and there's a lot of other people who stutter in a way that's not like your stutter, but they still get it too. And then seeing other people's islands grow um, when you're working with them, when you're helping them. I always love at NSA meetings when you have someone who's there for the first time, and I always like to ask them, how many other people that stutter have you met in your life? And they say this and that. And then just seeing them, that all of a sudden they're not alone anymore. And I feel like I also try to grow this island of mine by changing the attitudes that non-stutterers have and to help educate them. So now you have friends and allies. And one quick story I can share about the power of seeing someone's island grow and having a larger stuttering island is uh, when my daughter was about 3, she began to stutter. And then it was in a way that was not probably typical for someone her age. And I could see that she was kind of confused because she didn't know what was happening. She was trying to speak and she was getting stuck, and words weren't really coming out the way that she was familiar with them. And she was frustrated, she was scared, she was upset, and I could see this. And it was the first time that I sat her down and I was like, that's just called stuttering. That's a way that some people talk. And you might have noticed that sometimes when I talk, my words get stuck too. So I stutter too. I'm just like you. And her eyes just lit up and she got this huge smile on her face and she said, "I'm just like daddy." And like on the outside, I was smiling, but on the inside, I was like, "Oh, come here." And, and yeah, so it's just, I do everything that I can now to both make sure that my island isn't shrinking down. Because sometimes you get those days where it's pretty high tide and that island starts to shrink up on you and you got to beat it back a little bit. But and then also helping other people feel like they're not alone as well.
Oh, thank you, Tim. That was beautiful. So well said. And I love that, just the image of a bridge and the islands and bringing each other in. Love it. Ah, Randy, we're going to move on to you, friend. We loved how you talked about walking alongside your clients and helping them along of that path of self-discovery in terms of their values, their motivations, their desires. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, being a person who stutters and being a speech pathologist, um, you definitely realize that, your journey is not every person who stutters journey. And I think it's important to share with clients some of your journey if it's applicable, but you're more so there to just kind of walk with them and what they're experiencing. It's not your role to say, give them advice. Obviously, you want to present them with, research-backed information and facts and dispel myths and things like that. But it's really just a place for them to kind of grow with you. And that's what I've learned a lot as a SLP who stutters. I heard a psychologist recently say that like if you think that you have this strong schema or understanding of a client and what they need to do in XYZ, you're not listening deeply enough, because their case is every person's case, and particularly people who stutter, is so unique. And I just really love working with people who stutter, because it's just like there's just so many little nuances about every single little case. And it keeps me up at night, which I sometimes don't like, but I like. And it's just like, what can I do within this short amount of time in our session to really help this person take positive steps towards whatever they want to achieve. So I've really tried to think about that. But yeah, honestly, I just love what everybody's saying about authenticity. Like, that is a major focal point of my life, and I think stuttering was the thing that got me there. Um, when I was a counselor at Camp Say for my first time, and that's when I really realized that I think my life was about becoming the most me I could possibly be. And I just felt like I was in such a safe place where I could be myself, and I was trying new things. Um, and then now I'm listening a lot to Brene Brown, who obviously is so applicable to stuttering. And she talks a lot about shame, which I'm big on shame recently, because I'm starting to realize that shame is just such a large aspect of the stuttering experience. And it's just a main reason a lot of the time for why we hide and conceal and feel weak. And she says vulnerability is our most accurate measurement of courage. And that's like my new thing, is just I have to just be willing to put myself out there. And but yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, everybody. I just have loved hearing everybody's stories. And I just can't wait to meet you all in person soon at a stuttering conference. I'm sure you'll be there. So
Thank you, Randy. It is something so special, this space. Okay, Anna and Paula, back to you.
All right. I'm going to open this question for Kyle, but I would love to hear others' input as well, because I think this is just something that is so important to discuss in relation to education. And Kyle, you had shared about adopting a mindset that ignorance serves as a sounding bell for action. And I just love that. And you talked about the sense of agency that you experience when you willingly take on the burden of responsibility to educate those around you. Would you mind sharing about the incident at the barbecue restaurant? And you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
I'll unmute myself. Absolutely. I want to share a brief story about probably 12-year-old Kyle first, very quickly. 8th grade, and it's interesting. I'm sure, it's not easy to grow up as a kid who stutters. All of us have our own experiences, but like there's ones that stick with you and like imprint moments, as Kristen Camilla would say. Like, I'm in class, was reading class, and we're going up and down the rows and reading. And of course, it's horrible. I would try to go to the bathroom to get out of it, blah, blah, blah. But for this instance, whatever, I couldn't get out of the bathroom. So I'm in there, and of course, my hands are shaking. So I read, and my friend who was on my baseball team next to me, after I'm done reading, I could hear them kind of laughing as I'm reading, and I couldn't get a word out. I had some doozies, and he looked at me and he went, "Hey, I know you can't help that happens, but man, it is just funny to like see how your body does that. Like, it's just so funny, man." And I went, "Yeah, I know, man, right?" And it sucked. And those little moments happened. And I put my tail between my legs and I did jack. And on the outside, I was laughing. It wasn't happening on the inside, right? And the amount I ruminated on it, it's, everybody knows that feeling, and where things begin to spiral. The bottom line was I felt like crap about myself. And it kept happening over and over and over again, avoidance, avoidance, avoidance. So fast forward, with the help of a lot of people, to the journey. I'll give this one. I was at a restaurant in Wicker Park in Chicago, and I had ordered a pulled pork sandwich. And so I was also with my buddy who stuttered, but I order, the waitress goes, "Oh," and I stutter on it. He goes, "You'd like a pulled pork sandwich, huh?" And it just caught me so off guard. I was just like stunned that she did that. And of course, other people are around, and that's the reality. And so my other buddy who I was with went to like jump in because he was angry, and I was just like, "Hold on." She went and got our drinks and came back. And in that moment, I was thinking to myself, like, all right, like, this ain't going down like this. Like, work with kids who stutter, A. B, it's not going to go down this way. So I said to her, "I just have a question. I was just wondering why you did that." And she said, "Did what?" And I said, "Oh, well, when I ordered, you repeated this pounds back to me." He was like, "Oh, I was just trying to be funny. It's no big deal." And it was, I didn't go, "That's all right." I went, "Oh, well, I don't know if you ever met anybody who stutters, but I'm actually someone who stutters. Do you know anything about stuttering?" And it's like that move of like what you do next. And I was angry. I felt embarrassed. And it's like the old Mr. Rogers adage. I love Mr. Rogers. It's, what do you do with the mad that you feel, right? What do you do with it? And so for me, that action like led to us having like a 20-minute conversation about stuttering. And he's the nicest person, obviously. She didn't mean any harm by it. And I'm just giving you that specific example. I'm not generalizing that to all situations or all people, just one moment in time. But the bottom line, and then I'll wrap it up, is, yeah, I was educating other people, and that helping the world, right? Maybe the next time another person comes in, that feels good. But it was really selfishly for me, because I felt better than when I was in 8th grade and just went, yeah. And I think agency comes from action, and the feeling of being empowered comes from you doing something to get bigger than something that's happening around you. Like, the reality is, talking about acceptance, it could mean a lot of different things. For me, just me, part of it has been accepting that the world doesn't know a whole lot about stuttering, and that there's probably going to be negative reactions. that feel like crap at times. And it's like, what can you do with it? Had I gotten angry and started screaming at her, I don't think it would have led to a connection, you know? And so there was another incident at a bar that happened, and I ended up buying the guy a drink, and we had a great conversation all about it. So it's just like, for me, what do you do with it? And is it an opportunity to actually make a connection? You know?
Thank you. I would love to hear from anyone else in terms of just what are your sounding bells for action, or how do you think about, just your role in education and just dealing with ignorance and comments or actions that maybe aren't meant to sting, but do, right? Anybody else? Lauren?
Yeah, so similarly, I am still finding the best ways to kind of like tell people that I am a person who stutters when situations like that happen. I have a story I tell all the time. This was before I got the good therapy that I had. And it's one of those stories where the man who said something to me was just so creative that I kind of just went along with it. But nowadays, like, I feel like I would stand up for myself. But I was in high school and I had to go pick up my car, and me being a woman at like car shop, not my place. And so I go there and I say, oh, I'm here to pick up my car. And he goes, oh, what's your name? And I go, oh, Schlemmer. And in my head at the time, I was like, yes, you said it smoothly, like you didn't stutter. That's awesome and great. And then he went to go on my key and he couldn't. And he returns then and he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I can't find your key. What's the name again? And I said, Schlemmer. Nice and smooth. Good job, Lauren. You did it again. And then so he goes to find the key. He can't still. So he brings out his manager. And I feel like in places, or when I come across people of authority, I usually kind of become more self-conscious of it. Like, I don't know, it's just like a thing that I have. But he comes out and he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, we can't find your key. What's your name? One more time. And I go, Schlemmer. And he pauses, and in my head I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good one. And so he turns to me and he goes, oh, chia. And so I was like, wow, I know it's and so in my head I was like, ooh, that was really bad, but creative points for that. I've never heard that one ever. So that kind of brings me to like now though, there have been times where that kind of stuff has happened. And I feel like sometimes it's still kind of hard to stand up for myself, because I feel like sometimes when I tell people like, oh no, like I actually have a stutter, they're kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like they kind of like backlash, like apologize. And I'm like, no, like it's fine. Like I was just telling you so you don't do that like again. So I feel like it's still kind of hard because I don't want them to feel bad for me. But as we've all been saying, like I feel like people still just don't know that stuttering is an actual thing that people have. And I think it can be hard too, because a lot of times people who stutter can be very covert as well. So I don't know. I think it's still tough. It's hard for me to kind of figure out what way to tell people where I don't like offend them then, but then I shouldn't feel bad because they kind of offended me first of all. So it's a tricky kind of conniption, or yeah. So
I would just like to add off that, because I really like how you said that, Lauren, about how like when you do advocate for yourself, when those moments happen, you say, oh no, I actually stutter, how usually the reaction is they're always so shocked and they always feel so bad. And it's sometimes I need to see that as a reminder that they don't inherently mean anything bad. They just don't know. And I feel like that's a really good window into society at large, is they don't mean bad, they just don't know. And sometimes you really have to work up your thick skin to not leave too hurt in those situations, because as cool as you are with your own stutter, hearing someone mock you to your face just kind of cuts deep sometimes. So yeah, I really like how you said that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we're all talking about this, because I think it's really important. The one that I hear a lot from my clients, and one that I've heard multiple times in my life, going to say my name and then getting a block. Oh, did you forget your name? And it's like you take a step back and you're like, why would you ask me that? But I think the whole point of this conversation specifically is you can either take that at face value and not say anything, and then hold on to it for the rest of your life as a example of why people are out to get you or won't be accepting of you. Or you can choose to use that opportunity to educate, and to form that connection. And as we've all talked about, and I truly believe that most people will be open to that connection, and then you can reframe the whole experience to something that could have been negative to now it's a positive experience. And that's really great.
And I certainly love that word connection, as Kyle said, as Cody's echoed it, as all of us as we've echoed it, because I think, Cody, something you said was letting it live alone inside you. I did that for the longest time, my childhood, up until probably the past 5 years, when the last time someone said, did you forget your name? It's like 1,000 cuts, or death by 1,000 cuts. I think they call that like a microaggression. I think I heard that expression, but it never gets old. But I love, now that I've been empowered and I have the tools of self-disclosure, or that agency, taking that action to educate others. And ultimately, what I was always lacking was connection. I was always feeling isolated. So I love, it's like this, is it antidote or the opposite? I don't know what word, but it's like, hey, connection. There can be connection when once it was isolation, whether it is in this light of, in a way where someone, didn't intend to be mean, but they were, but okay, I can use this as a connection. And so it's comforting, kind of bringing it all together for me. So thank you, everyone, for sharing. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I thought we would close, Tim. We're going to end our time together with your quote. That's so beautiful and powerful. And Tim said, every stutter I allow to be seen empowers me to love the whole of myself rather than parts of myself. So tell us how this has played out in your life as we wrap up our time together.
Yeah, thank you for that. As I said earlier, I was and still am in very many ways a covert stutterer. And when I was young, I thought of that end goal as being fluent. And then when my mindset kind of shifted, it was then the end goal was acceptance. One day I'll accept my stutter. One day I'll be okay with this. And now that just kind of morphed now into acceptance is more of a choice that you can make in the moment of stuttering. Because I don't know about all you, but I know when I'm going to stutter. I feel it coming a mile away. And in that moment, I have a choice where I can either change my words, which I got pretty darn good at, or I can let myself stutter. And certainly, in many times, it would be easier to change my words so I wouldn't stutter. But if I can allow myself to let the stutter happen, then I am empowering myself to say, like, no, the way that you're speaking is valid, and it's beautiful, and you should love the way you speak, because not everyone has the opportunity to stutter like me. And so I try to view it as, in those moments, I have that choice. And if I can be strong enough to let the stutter happen, then I can kind of take charge of how the other person will see it. If they see me looking at them, smiling, laughing about my stutter, if it's a particularly silly one or in an inopportune moment, because that also happens. If they can see the attitude that I have, if they see me love myself, then they will start to share that love as well. And then it can just kind of grow the acceptance. So that's kind of where I was coming from when I wrote that.
Beautiful, Tim. Thank you. Again, that theme of empower, acceptance, community, education, right? I love this. Anyone else? Anna Paula?
Well, thank you all. We've come to the end of our time together, but I just want to thank each of you for sharing your stories. And again, just a plug for going to Spero's social media platforms and read more of what they wrote. If you haven't checked out their stories, I think you'll just learn so much and just be encouraged as you just immerse yourself, more into what that stuttering experience is. And there were, I think we had almost 20 SLPs who stutter who contributed. So we were just excited to be able to elevate their voices, and just thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you all of you, for just sharing more, and we'll see you next time.